everybody's here yet, really. I don't think, but like it says one person's there. It's probably you though. So
Yeah, I think that's.
So
I'm cool with that.
yeah.
How are you? How's the family? What's going on?
We're plugging along. We are doing Eliza, who is the 5-year-old, and I hung Christmas lights outside today because she really likes doing that. So we did that this morning. They got up as per usual at 6:15, 6:30 this morning. So we've been up since very early o'clock. And I mean, we've just kind of been hanging out. I mean, I've gotten some boxes down out of the attic. I mean, for like Christmas decorations, we have not put them up yet, really. I mean, that's a this weekend thing, but want to, you know how it is. You want to make sure you know where everything is, right? So, I'd forgotten that I put this. This is old man stuff, but I'd forgotten that I put the Christmas lights out in the shop with other decorations instead of in the light. So I spent 15 minutes climbing around the attic looking for it. I mean, it was that kind of deal, right? So, welcome. If anybody's rolling up in here, welcome. This is our first, maybe actually it's technically our second, but our first officially monetizable live stream. So, welcome. Our audio is kind of choppy. I think you said something, but would you cut for a second?
Yeah, we'll work it out. Mm-hmm. This is one of the things.
Right.
In Georgia.
We missed the first.
That could be some of the connection. Yeah. Because right now I'm looking at myself, but I'm not moving on camera.
I am, and maybe probably in the live stream too. You're blacked out. Like there's no video at all. So I can hear you okay, but sorry guys if you're coming to hang out with us. We're not doing much of anything yet. We are. Hey, what's up? We're trying to get all our technical stuff worked out. We've done this once before and it worked fine. So of course, as we're working it out, it's going to take a little bit. We're going to shortly, when he gets back and gets when we get all this technical stuff lined up, we should be able to have a little conversation about Hey Jude and about Kanye. So it'll be pretty interesting, I think.
I'd like to start actually with Hey Jude. That's McCartney, right? That's Paul's song, right?
Yeah, and that's one of those things. One of the first things I was going to say to you is, I bet after we've done this work so much now that you know immediately which of the Beatles did that song.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, and I guess this is kind of what has made me kind of infamous in this space is my hot takes.
Yeah,
man, Paul be kicking John's ass on the songwriting side, Andrew. He's just the superior songwriter, Andrew, and it's just like, nah, they broke up because he couldn't handle being second fiddle to Paul. His songs are just better.
They are, by this point in the Beatles' career, they are instantly recognizable. Like at the beginning of their career, it was harder to tell. Their voices sounded more the same. They were friends Liverpool together, so their voices sounded similar-ish. But obviously, as with anybody, I mean, the older you get, the more your voice changes, and their songwriting styles change too. So you start to by later in their careers, you start hearing much more differences between the two, right?
He's just got you want to know, and it's funny, I'm about to make some Wu-Tang references.
All right, do
it. With the Beatles. First of all, this song, like just the format of it, which is kind of like without one, is very like Enter the 36 Chambers. Like it's like, hold on, where's the actual verse? Where's the hook? Where's the bridge? It's all in one, and it's fucking dope. You know what I'm saying?
It is all chorus. You could say.
Yeah, it's like
Flash bridge.
I was like, is the end the bridge? Is that the bridge, or is that the chorus, or like, or did he just riff? Did he
I mean,
freestyle?
sort of. I mean, it
So,
like you would think of as a bridge. For those of you who don't, I assume everybody watching this would know what "Hey Jude" is, but like the na 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 na, that part that goes over and over and over and over again at the end. It functions like a bridge, right? I mean, that because it's a different kind of musical movement, but there's nothing else that comes after it either, right? And
right,
bridge, and obviously, metaphorically and musically, bridges have to go to somewhere, right? It has to have a usually a bridge is, and then you come back to the chorus and you come back to whatever. But this song doesn't do that, and
no,
no like traditional chorus really. All the verses, um, I mean, it really has a verse, and you kind of call it a bridge. The "Hey Jude, don't
right.
be," like that's the verse part, right? And the "Anytime you feel the pain, hey Jude" refrain. That part is sort of a bridge-ish too.
But
Um,
I mean, that's that
right,
Wu Tang shit. It's
right,
like you really
right,
don't know where
it's
they're coming from, Andrew. You don't know where the bars are coming from. It's like he's all over the it. I don't believe I'm about to do this. It's like this is what I mean about the Wu Tang reference. It's like no, like John Lennon in the beginning, I think is Method Man, and Paul McCartney is more ODB.
okay.
But it's like by this stage of their career, he's both. He's like Method Man and Old Dirty Bastard. I was actually hearing Old Dirty Bastard, like when he just breaks off and goes na 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 and just starts going. I'm like, that's that
Yeah.
Old Dirty Bastard shit. And when Old Dirty Bastard would do that, that's what separated Wu Tang and just gave it a whole nother feel. And so like Paul just has another feel, I think. You
Yeah.
know, he's in I want to be careful how I say this. It's like Paul got a little bit more soul to him.
He does have more
He's
soul.
a little bit more
He
funky.
does
He looks funky with
both
it.
in the modern world. You think of John Lennon as the indie musician, like the one that's writing the weirder songs, the ones that are kind of off kilter, um, the ones that are not as beautifully sung, though they are beautifully sung, the ones that have weird chord progressions, the ones that are a little turned sideways, a little off kilter. And McCartney is like, I don't want to say Taylor Swift, but he's like the one that's like straight ahead pop song, four chords and whatever, punch you in the face. Like it's and Hey Jude is probably one of the biggest songs that they ever made. Like
Is
it,
it?
yeah.
Okay. That was one of my next questions that I was gonna kind of ask you is like, where is Hey Jude at in their catalog? Because I'm familiar with their catalog and I've heard this song before, but I think, like we've often talked about, due to the progress that we've made from the
Hmm.
course when all these episodes, my musical ear has changed some.
Yeah.
And I enjoy this song way more than
Mhm.
I used to enjoy it before we did this show.
Right. If you're asking me personally, where I rank it, like for my personal taste, um, I probably wouldn't say it's one of my 10 favorite Beatles songs.
Okay.
Though I would, if I were saying like importance in the wider cultural, most famous, most important, most that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, if I were saying that, it's probably, if it's not the best, it's one of the top two or three. Like it's very
Oh,
very high up in the catalog. I put it with like Yesterday and Love Me Do. Like those are like the very, it's
top
way,
10.
way icon. And it also helps, I think, that um it helps both these songs' legacy and McCartney's legacy that he has lived, is still living, and he's 80 something now, I think. And he's still performing these songs, right? And so they have they still have a life in a way that John Lennon's don't really. In the same, I mean, they John Lennon's live in memory, they live in covers, they live in like people's hearts for sure, but it's not the same as somebody still living and still playing them, right? It's not, it doesn't work the same. And Paul McCartney is the, if he's not the greatest melody writer in pop music history, he's certainly up in the top tier. Like he writes things that are maybe not as serious. Like they're not like intensively. This is probably that's one of my notes that I wrote actually. This is probably the least, probably the simplest lyric of any song that we've covered in any genre. Um,
he he doesn't have John's social construct
No.
or at all. But it's like I've been saying, the more we do this show, the more I understand how melody and voice matter.
Hmm.
And he's got the melodies and the voice.
Yeah.
And melody and voice oftentimes is going to trump content. And that's for me being a content type of writer
Yeah.
and with
Me
the
too.
content MC.
Yeah.
So,
No, what I mean, you can walk. The thing is, you could conceive of "Hey Jude" as all chorus, right? Like this, like 3 or 4 or 5 different hooks. You can walk around all day saying "na na 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 na," right?
I,
It loops, right? But the beginning of it does, the bridge does. I mean, all of them are very catchy, right? And they stick. And the lyrics are simple, so you remember them, and like it's not a complex song. It's just 3 or 4 chords. Um, the na 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 parts 3, the verses 3. It adds a little bit of different chord structure in the anytime you feel the pain that part. Hey
so
Jude, like that part's a little bit different, but it's basically 3 or 4 chords. So
yeah, I'm about to say it's like 3 chords is what I hear for the most of the song. I hear 3 chords, right? Right. So here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you something funny. You know what made me want to do Hey Jude, right?
no, you said you want to do some of the biggest songs ever, and I figured that was why. But like maybe there's
I
more to
mean,
that.
yeah, that's part of it. But I was watching Ted Lasso,
Mm,
the episode of Ted Lasso where they're outside, and because it's based in England, and one of the episodes they're singing Hey Jude at the end, and
mhm.
I was, oh shit, I was like, I know the words to that song. It's like, thanks, Andrew. And immediately, first of all, I sang Hey Jude for like 20 minutes straight. And then after I got done singing Hey Jude is when I texted you. It was like, hey, I think we should totally do Hey Jude because now it's about to be stuck in my head for the next 3 days.
It's a very, very, very sticky song, for sure.
Super sticky. It might, how about this? And this is what I mean. The simple, stupid works. Well, it might be the simplest in terms of lyrics that we heard, but I
Yeah.
can't one song that you've given me that we've done on that side that stuck the way Hey Jude stuck too. I was literally singing that shit from Sunday to Tuesday.
Yep.
It was
The
it was only driving to Atlanta,
mhm.
like to go to work, that made me be like, okay, I need to cut this Hey Jude shit off.
Yeah, yeah. It's good stuff, man. Like it's and the na 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 part at the end is even simpler, right? He takes a simple construct of a song, and he makes it even simpler at the end. Like, because you don't have to know any words at all to go na 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 na, right? It's just over and over and over and over again. And that's one of the other cool things about that too, is it translates across language lines. It translates all around, right? You don't have to know any words that he's saying at all to be able to sing along with that.
No,
That's something
well,
unusual.
I have you to thank for it because it's like I was like, oh no, I know this song, I know who's singing it, I know
Mhm.
how many chords are on there, and I'm like, man, and this is just like the rest of me. I'm like, this shit is a banger.
The biggest radio that's ever been made. Like, and he plays that outro. I mean, in the studio version of Hey Jude, it's what, 7 minutes, right? Like,
Yeah.
and almost 4 minutes are him going na 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 na, right? Like that's almost
The,
4 minutes.
the last 2 to 3 minutes definitely is just him riffing, but that's what I mean. It gave me like Old Dirty Bastard vibes. It's like, oh no, that's something Old Dirty Bastard would do in rap form,
Yeah,
just to get a song that because I do think that ending is part of what helps make it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like uh it's like Old Dirty Bastard on chess boxing
Okay.
when he's like introducing the ghost face killer. It's
Yeah,
like it just stays with you your whole life because you're like, I don't think I've ever heard anybody like end a verse like that. The same way it's like you really don't hear pop songs end with the bridge, and the bridge is like an extended play that's actually as long as the actual lyrics to the song. That's what I mean. This is on some Wu Tang shit. It's like, oh, he didn't care what he was doing. He just knew that the shit was dope.
yeah. The transition actually between the last verse and the na 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 part is one of the most iconic pieces of music in probably pop music history, where it's better, 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 and it goes wow, right, and then he goes na
That's
na na. So
funky.
that That's one of those things that just kind of builds, and you're like,
That's what I mean. Like that's that funky shit he has in him that John doesn't necessarily have at this stage. You know what I mean? It's almost like I don't know, for him, for somebody that is such a, and I can say this because I know his stuff well enough now, he is the classical, typical formatted melody writer.
mhm.
To watch him riff like that is part of what makes the song so special, isn't it?
Yeah, because he does all that improv stuff over the na 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 part. Most of the na na nas at the end are John and George singing it, right? Or
Didn't
and I mean Paul does it too, but like he comes
right,
back, he fades back and forth, and he goes the Jude Jude Jude. I mean all that stuff, right, is
right.
part of the thing. So um yeah, it's a really 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 cool song.
It is. Um, so I know your Beatles stuff. You said it's not top 10 for you. So give me your top 10 Beatles songs, just like off the top
Yeah,
of your
that out
head.
loud.
Like we're live now, so now we have time to do like different types of riffs, like on the
Mhm.
spot. And so I would submit to you that I would like to hear your top 10 Beatles songs, because I'd like to see like if any of the songs that I'm like impartial to like arrive on your list, because you're the
Are
expert in
you
that.
Are you asking me, because they're two different things, right? Are you asking me what I think are the most important ones, or are you asking me which ones are my personal favorites?
No, I'm asking you your personal favorites. You can
Oh,
give me both, though, actually. I mean, we're here. You know what I'm saying? We got about another probably 40 minutes. So
yeah.
it's like, yeah.
Hmm. So
This is obviously one of the more important ones based on the way you're talking.
yeah, it is. It's an important song. It's not really. I mean, yesterday is one of the most important ones. Um,
I agree.
Musically, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, like that first song, that the intro to that is probably one of the most important ones, because
Oh,
that's the announcement of being like something new and different and radically like changing everything.
okay. So that's the song that kind of like had never been heard before.
Right. That one's. Um, we've talked about this. We have an episode for those of you who are new to this channel. We have an episode from almost 2 years ago now, probably, where we talked about um, with awards. I think it was with Award Tour, and then Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and with a little help from my friends. Um, it was maybe not the first concept album, but certainly one of the very first, where
Yeah.
you're taking construct and because the construct is them playing a concert, right? And the Beatles feeling like at that point that they were too big to be able to perform on stage or whatever. They had stopped performing live at that point. This was 1967, so they were trying to push the boundaries of what was happening in the studio, right? Um,
Are they
so
the
they
authors of the concept
created
album?
a persona for themselves, and
Are they the authors of the concept album? Is like Sergeant Pepper's like the first like rock and roll concept album?
let me say it like this. I don't know of others that were before that. Now, I do not know all of my history well enough to be able to say definitively it was the first one. It's certainly the first most famous one. There are probably others, but it's the first one, and this is the first one where you hear the Indian influences, the sitars, and that kind of thing. That
Mm.
start pulling that stuff into. They did some of that on Revolver too, but which is the album right before. Um,
Okay, right. Because a lot of people, I mean, I think a lot of the time the argument is Revolver or Sergeant Pepper's, correct?
that run is really those three: Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sergeant Pepper. Those three in a row are. I mean the run from like they made from like late the end of '65 through 1970 is one of the great musical like
Is
runs ever been.
is the White Album anywhere in there? Because that was my introduction to the
It's
Beatles.
part of
Okay, so
eight, I think, or
know
nine.
our first of all, your junior high and high school classmate and friend Summer Murphy, who was my girlfriend in high school, her mother, Dee Dee, shout out to Dee Dee, um,
Cool
who
lady. Sure.
she's fighting the fight. I'm not gonna say too much, but shout out to Dee Dee for fighting the fight. But she put me onto the Beatles our senior year of high school via the White Album,
Mm.
and
That's a good
my
point.
so my introduction to the Beatles is the White Album. And I remember her telling 17-year-old me, she's like, yeah, they were practically broken up by then. They were fighting and like recording in separate rooms. I'm like, how? I'm like, this shit sounds great. It sounds together. She's
Yeah.
and so I knew nothing about Revolver or Rubber Soul or Sergeant Pepper's. It was always the White Album, and I didn't become privy to the other albums till I got with my guy Obi, who was the producer of my first co-producer along with my cousin M6 of my first album. When I met him in Cali, it's like I used to give him hardcore Southern rap shit. Like I give him the Die by Scarface, and he would
Yeah.
give me like Rubber Soul by the Beatles. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Good
He's
as well.
like, you need to listen to this. And so that's how my process of being engaged with the Beatles started, you know. So
Yeah, that place in there, the Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sergeant Pepper, that time is when they stopped playing live and they started pushing the boundaries in the studio. That's when you think of, or Beatle maniacs think of them as kind of in two different groups, right? There's the first half, which is basically through Help or Hard Day's Night, which is much more a pop kind of sensibility, much more. It's not like Jackson 5 or Motown, but it would be that kind of straight ahead pop song, um, a much more skillful version of the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or something like that. It's that kind of, or Bieber, like loving, like all these girl songs, and I mean all that kind of stuff, right? And then at that point is when they kind of shift over to um, seeing what they can do in the studio and seeing what kind of cool magic they can make, and that kind of space. And the songs become
it's always
feel
fast.
necessary,
It's
but
always fast.
there's more.
It's always fascinating to me when you talk about this and kind of like separate it, like time period wise. Like, yeah, this is when they stopped performing live, and so like I think people need to understand that they were like the biggest band like that had ever lived before they even made their greatest pieces of work.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. Like the the story is that the last time, well, not the last time they performed live, last time they performed like a concert in a stadium kind of thing was in Shea Stadium in New York, in 1965 or six. I don't remember what. I don't have my dates in front of me, but um, the story is that the girls in the crowd, and the crowd was screaming so loud they couldn't hear each other standing beside each other on the stage, and like they couldn't go in public, they couldn't do anything, um, and they were probably just like, this is enough, and we can't. And even just as a band, right, forgetting the celebrity, forgetting all the other stuff, like just as a band, just as a band, like you have to be able to hear each other on stage, you have to be able, right, like you have to be able to follow what is going on. So um and they got to the point where they couldn't do that anymore live. um I mean, they famously played a sort of a show on a rooftop in like 1969, I think, in 1970, around the release of Get Back in Abbey Road. But that wasn't like an announced thing. That wasn't whatever. I'm sure you've seen videos. They're wearing these long coats and have long hair and mustaches and stuff like that. And they just climb in London, and just sort of just like rocking out. And the crowd just like shuts down. Like,
So let me get this straight. These motherfuckers just stopped performing,
yeah,
and they were like living, like I mean, just
they're
for
not.
me, to me is it's like, well, your show money's your real money. Were they that big that they had that much money already? Were they like
They
that?
had a lot of money. They did. Um,
Wow.
they they had certainly enough to live on. Obviously, the tax rate in England was a lot higher. They actually, the first song on Revolver is called Taxman, which is about, um, which is about, this is George Harrison song. It's about that. So there's One for You, 19 for Me is the Taxman's song. But
That means
um,
they had money. They were talking about the tax man. That means they had fucking money,
they,
right?
they were like, they were seriously wealthy. Paul McCartney right now, probably one of, if not the wealthiest musician in the world, but like, certainly one of them. Like he's way up there.
Yeah,
Like billionaire.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, that's obviously 50 or 60 years of compounding interest too, but it's, and playing concerts and all that kind of stuff. But no, I think they were at the place they didn't need the money. And you all have to remember too, like the part that blows my mind about this, the part you have to remember is that they were at that point, like in the mid 60s, they were like 25 years old or
That
26. They were like so young.
so they were still young. So they had been doing this for about what 7, 8 years. So they really got made it big at like 17, 18, 19.
They started that. I mean, the Beatles story is that,
That's
or
rapper shit.
way is that John and Paul met in school, like what we would think of as middle school, um, and were friends and went to each other's houses and jammed or whatever. Um, but the Beatles know them like that group. Ringo was the last one to join. This is a thing where they fired the drummer and got a different one. Not the point of the story. They went to Germany in like I think it was 1962 or three, maybe. Um,
Mhm.
or maybe even before that. It was very, very early on, and they were like 20 years old ish. Um, and they were a bar band, like, and they would go to the clubs or whatever, and they would play like 10-hour sets at night. Like they would play from like, midnight to, or like 10 o'clock at night until 4 in the morning, or they play like literally all night. And
Wow.
that's got so tight and got so good, or one of the ways. I mean, they were talented anyway, but like that crucible is, and that's why they did so many cover songs, and that's how they tightened up their harmonies, and that's how they gotten their like their
That's
stage presence together, and that's how just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of repetition.
that's rapper shit. That's
Yeah,
just like yeah, the rappers usually meet like in middle school or high school, and it's usually like they freestyling on the block for hours with their friends, and
that's
they
exactly.
get talented enough, and one day they're like, "Hey, you want to know what? Should probably go to the studio and record this, put this down."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they started with songs like "Love Me Do" and "I Want to Hold Your Hand" and all that kind of stuff that sounds like titles of Bieber songs, right? But
Yeah, I
I
want
mean,
to hold.
they're better than, but that's not the point, right? That's I mean, they started there as well, and then they evolved into some other, um, still rock and roll stuff, but like different. They had different interests. Like to think, I think of the Beatles. You think of the Beatles as being old, and you think of them as being like uh,
Hmm.
going through a whole lot of stuff while they were performing. Really, their peak um, was probably. I mean, you could generously say 1962 to 1970. Um, and on the back end, on the front end, like really, you think of the Beatles like apex, or the jump when they performed on Ed Sullivan and did the like
That's
the
the that's
mania,
the that's
right,
the pop culture moment where it all kind of comes together and then becomes like the moment that people
right. So really,
snapshot. That's,
all like 6 years, 6 years, maybe seven, right? It's a very short amount of time, and they're Ringo might have been 30 when they broke up, but like most of them were not even 30 years old. They were like 29, 20, like they were when they broke up, and they did all of this. It's nuts to think about the what they accomplished in such a short amount of time.
so what's funny about that when you bring that up is that Mike D and I were just having a conversation on According to Hip Hop about how when Rakim left
Hmm.
92, people were like, and he came back in 97, people like thought he was old. It's like, no, you stupid motherfucker. It's like he got a deal at 17. That
Yeah,
was
I remember.
87. He
Yeah,
left in 92. So when he's coming back, he's not even 30. And people are like, who's the old guy? The old guy's not 30. What are you talking about? But in culture, he was so big, kind of like the Beatles. In a lot of ways, Rakim is our Beatles. He's like the guy that changed everything
right.
musically for us. It's like, so he looks like more of an OG than he actually is. It's like, no, this nigga's like 28.
And everything that came after him and the Beatles, it was
like,
influenced.
Rakim and Jay-Z are almost the same age.
I remember you saying that. Like that seems
It
not
seems,
right to me.
but how far ahead of the curve that Rakim was that
Yeah.
no, Rakim was rapping. I've always told people the way people rapped in 1996 when you probably got familiarized with hip hop,
Mhm.
well, he rapped like that in 1986.
Right. And he
And,
was the then,
and so,
right?
so he's ahead of the curve the same way I think the Beatles are. In all respect due to the Beatles, probably a little bit more so because his competition uh, was probably more astute than the Beatles was because they're clearly like the superior band, mostly because they have John and Paul.
Yeah. And George. Yeah. Like
George, how about
we've had
this? Like, it's like,
conversations too.
you know,
Yeah.
George is like James Worthy on the Showtime Lakers. It's like I get it, but Magic and Kareem are there. So, you're James Worthy.
Yeah. The Beatles are, if like you had a, you could easily argue that John Lennon and Paul McCartney are both in the top 10 list of the best songwriters of in rock and roll history, both of them, and
Yeah.
probably 25 or something like that. So it's
One of
that's
like one and the other guy is like seven though, and you start seeing the gap. I want to bring up something that you kind of brought up about them that I hadn't really considered before, and this is an Outcast reference, of course. Um, part of what has hurt Outcast's stature is that, well, they don't go out and perform the songs, and so
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up because I thought it as I was saying it too.
oh no, it definitely like it literally flashed all across my face and broke my heart like it usually does when I said it. I was like, oh, I'm like John shit isn't bigger than Paul's also because he's not here to perform it, which
Right.
makes the whole Outcast thing. Of course, it's a one-sided thing we all know, but it makes it all the more egregious because I'm like, oh no, so maybe John would be it might be more of a, I mean, I still, from what I've heard, Paul is still the superior songwriter and songmaker and definitely with the melodies, but it might be like, well, that guy's number one, but this guy's like number 3 or 4, as opposed to like the gap that I feel when I listen to it as a black man.
Mm.
And I think you're right. A lot of that is because it's like, oh no, I can pull up footage of Paul McCartney performing these songs in his 30s, in his 40s, in his 50s, in his 60s. And John, unfortunately, due to his untimely demise, does not have that luxury. And it speaks to the importance of why you should do it while you're here on Earth.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So definitely triggered by
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I thought about that. And y'all, those of you who are watching, we're planning on doing a show 11 o'clock on Saturday, 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday to discuss this, to discuss Andre's record, and to discuss a couple other things too, just to see, um, have some different perspectives on it as well. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I
we'll
mean,
see how that goes.
just real quick, and I mean, we're just gonna hold it till Saturday. Like Pitchfork literally gave him a higher rating than like literally any rap album this year, and then they put it under the hip hop genre. I
That's
hate,
the part
I
that
hate those.
mhm.
They're awful. Like they're just awful. Like they can. Like I've been tweeting. It's like now I know how Russell Crowe felt about Robert De Niro. Like yeah, it's those type of vibes.
Mm, yeah. No, like I don't even think, again, to save some of it for Saturday, but like
Yeah,
I don't even think that Andre would say it's a rap album. Like if you ask, and I think in the interview done, he said rap album. So why are you? I don't understand why they're doing it. Like
he would
I
act.
think I think I have a softer opinion about it than you do. Like I did not go into it thinking that I was going to be annoyed. I wasn't already annoyed when I turned it on, I guess. But like it's not, you can't, and it's a media thing, it's a pitchfork thing, it's a whatever, it seems to be anyway, that are calling it rap, because I don't think he is calling it that.
I
He's
was like,
saying specifically it's not that.
he would be the first person to run out and be like, "Hey, that's not a rap album. I don't rap," and that's part of my problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that is the problem. It literally is the problem. No,
Mm.
I'm sick of black men when they get rich. It's like, oh yeah, that rap stuff. It's like, I mean, not to be funny, they sound like a middle-aged white guy. And I know I'm, speaking to my friend who's a middle-aged white guy,
No.
but it's like, fuck is that, Andrew?
No,
It's like,
no respect to
I'm,
my Deadhead following right here, that I'm list that or I'm doing lots of reactions to Grateful Dead songs, but Jerry Garcia very they told me they tell me in the comments regularly. He very famously said rap music is not music; it's just people talking. So we've had had to have some conversations about that as well. Like speaking of middle aged white men, people like that kind of conversation too. Is that I've had to say respectfully, I think Jerry's wrong about that. So,
well, it's one of those things. Imagine how this makes me feel that the guy who made me believe that I could rap. I always tell people it's like Illmatic is what made me want to rap.
mm,
Southern Realistic Cadillac Music is what made me believe that I could rap, especially Andre's ethos on the album, because I had some of those sentiments as a teenager. You know what I mean? That he expresses on that album. And the fact that I'm able to have rap conversations with you, who
yeah,
quite we're the same age, you're a middle-aged white guy. The fact that he escapes those things Meanwhile, I'm sending you Larry June's album, like, you need to listen to the other Larry June album, Andrew, and you're receptive to it. It's like, no, I feel like I took the wrong pill in the Matrix, and I can't dodge of the bullets. It's like,
Mm,
oh no, 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 I didn't dodge that one. Boom. It's like, no, 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 that one hit me too. Never mind, wrong pill.
yeah,
Yeah, it feels that way.
yeah. I look forward to getting to talk about this more. The Obviously the connection here when we're talking about Hey Jude that um, that they stopped performing too when they were very young, and they still have one, but they still have one of the greatest discographies that has ever been laid down on tape. Period.
Same
So
thing.
like,
Same thing for Outkast. It's like, no, like, people don't understand. It's just like, no. Okay, so Andre and Big Boy are like 17, 18 in 1994. It's over in 2000, essentially.
right.
But Speaker Box Love Below, like, they're just now getting to be like 28, 29. So it's like, no, it was over before they were 30. So there's some Wu-Tang and some Outkast parallels with the Beatles. Bars. Bars.
It is. It is. It is. The fun part is that Hey Jude was never on an album. It was just a single. It never appeared on any album ever. It was just a single. And they had some. Yesterday wasn't either. Actually, was never did never appear on an album. So some of their biggest songs ever never appeared on any album
You know,
ever.
when you told me that, it fucked my head up because it's like, I was like, oh, hold on. I'm like, most of their dope shit isn't like on a record that you can find. Like, you got to find it on a 45 or something. You know what I'm saying?
Of them, I mean, there's plenty of dope shit, as you say, on the regular albums too. But yeah, it is funny that the band that is widely credited for transitioning the music world from singles into like whole album making, um, with Rubber Soul and Revolver, like in that kind of era, is had some of their very biggest songs not on um, not on their albums too.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody who follows according to hip hop knows how I feel about Benzo or Beamer,
Yeah,
which is a soundtrack that you really can't find anymore.
for real.
Uh, the Nothing to Lose soundtrack that has their track Everlasting. No, no, no. You can't. If you go put Nothing to Lose soundtrack in on like any platform, you can't even pull it up. Those are like literally two of their top 25 records to me. But
It took, actually, speaking of soundtracks of that generation too. Our last episode that we did was on partially on Tupac's My Block, and that one's a hard one to find too. Relatively speaking, like that one's not easy to find either.
yeah, no, you Pac fan. Like most people, it's like they say that they're like Tupac fans. I'm like, My Block from the show soundtrack. They'd be like, hey, I'd be like,
Mm.
not you, that person.
I know that
Just
song. No, it's but that's because you're teaching me though, right? I mean, that's one of the
did it.
purposes of this whole show is like I'm learning about stuff, like, and that's the purpose of the channel too, like, and that's the same thing I'm doing with the Grateful Dead reactions, the same thing I'm doing because that's not something I know very much about either, and so the people are like teaching me about it. I'm like, here's what I hear and here's what I hear. Is this right? Am I hearing this correctly? And that kind of thing, right? And I'm doing the same thing with you here, like, and you're gracious enough to educate me about some of this, right?
Two-way street. Two-way street. Like I've learned. I've learned. I mean, this show. I mean, specifically, you have taught me where the voice and the melody is just such a factor, and it's transitioned into even how I look at hip hop and some of my takes this year. Like this has probably been the first year where I've been like, nah, you need to have Tupac's voice if you want to say that shit. I don't want to hear that from you. Not like I don't want to hear that from you. Like your voice ain't like that. You know what I'm saying? For you to be kicking that shit. So voice matters, melody matters. Um, Speaking of which, and this is a guy who I think changed all of this. I think Kanye West is probably the first person who became a prominent figure, or say rose to the top of hip hop without an all-time great voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But his content did carry him, and I think Jesus Walks is an example of, this song is more important than it is good. And and what's crazy about it, because I don't really listen to the record like that anymore, and it's not, I mean, it's never been one of my favorite Kanye records per se. I've always understood the importance. I forgot how short the song was.
yeah, I know. I was like, because when I was playing on Apple Music and it looped, And I was like, did he bring the first verse back again at the end? Like, is that what happened? But then I looked down, I was like, no, it started over again.
Yeah, it's only like 3 minutes, 13 seconds or some shit. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, this record was super short, which brings me to my first point. He knew he couldn't afford to make this record long because of the subject matter. So he's always had an astute mind for the listener. He's like, nah, if I give them too many bars on here, I'm going to lose them. And so about a minute and a half in the song is about the hook and the breakdown because he goes through his two verses like boom, like boom, like boom, you
Yeah,
know?
that's not at all.
So tell me, I want to know for you, what was your initial thoughts when you first heard the record, like when we were younger, and what are your thoughts now, listening to the record, some odd decades later?
My memory of it as a younger person, and we weren't that young when it came out. We were 25. Oh, we were 20 something. Yeah. When did when
Hold
was it?
on, 04 ish, 03, 03. It feels 03 ish.
Yeah, yeah, like 20 somethings.
Yeah, we're in our 20s.
Um.
2004. Yeah,
Okay. I remember. I
years
remember.
ago.
I remember the video of it more than anything. Like the all white. Isn't that the one that's all white,
Yep.
where everybody's wearing all? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that and thinking it was not weird, but like visually entertaining. Like I like the imagery that he used, and honestly, from this distance, I don't really remember what the imagery was, but I remember liking it when I saw it.
Here's another thing that I think people strategically forget is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the fourth single he released off this album.
For real? Wow.
He didn't come in kicking this shit. Through the Wires, the first single, and then it's Slow Jams with
Hmm.
Twista and Jamie Foxx.
Hmm.
And then it's All Falls Down, which is probably my personal favorite of all the singles from that
Talk
album.
about it a lot.
And
Yeah.
then he did Jesus Walk. So I want to say this, you know, he didn't get to come in and kick the Jesus Walk shit. He
Hmm.
had to get the buy-in. He had to make the Through the Wire, the Slow Jams, the All Falls Down for release and gain notoriety,
Okay.
and then drop Jesus Walks. It's like he had to get his. I mean, the song's called Jesus Walks. He had to get his followers and his disciples before he could actually drop the record as an
Right.
official. And so there was a strategic placement of it because also too, this is 2004 and this is rap. So it's like usually your singles are like strikes. You get three and then you're out.
Okay.
And so the fact that he made it to a fourth single, most rap albums that have four singles are the type of records that are considered to be the greatest rap albums of all time.
Same with
And
any other album too, like the ones that have four or five, like or
four is usually the mark. Like, I mean, not the riff off out of the hip hop space, but I think I remember Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation was the first album that I could remember where I was like, damn, I'm like, this motherfucker got like seven singles. And then I was like, that's half the album. I'm like, this is one of the best albums ever. And it was that way with her first album, Control, too. Like, that's why Janet is so big to me. It's like, no, Control had like 4 or 5 singles. Rhythm Nation had like 7 singles, like that made it out like with video work. And so
right.
it's you get albums of that quality where the mass consumption of it. But this is one of those records where I don't think he did it for mass consumption. He did it to separate himself from the rest of his peers in his class at the time, because it's like, well, Slow Jams isn't a different type of record for the time. And as much as I love All Falls Down, his perspective is different. I don't
Hmm.
think like he's trying anything different on the record. You know what I'm saying? Through the Wire is a little bit different because he had gotten in a car accident, but this right here,
Hmm.
you know, and what's funny is that if you listen to the first verse, he's not even really talking about Jesus. See,
Right. No, it's talking about growing up essentially. Yeah.
you know what the Midwest is? Young and restless. And restless niggas might snatch your necklace. And next, these niggas might jack your Lexus. Somebody tell these niggas who Kanye West is. That has nothing to do with Jesus. So
No.
this also goes back to, well, man, that melody and that hook. Jesus walks, God show me the way, because the devil's trying to break me down. Now let's get it twisted. No rapper had ever talked like that before. Nobody had ever talked like that on a hook to a song before, you know?
Yeah.
And there is a little jumping out the window, but he cautiously jumped out the window. Like he made
Yeah.
sure he had singles and was platinum before he hit
Right.
him with the walks thing. And here's another thing that I remember. I'd never heard a record like this played in the club before. Like
He
Jesus
said
Walks.
that song, right? Like I want to go to the club and hear. Jesus Walks playing. Like,
That's the part that they actually used to play. So he kind of prophesized his own ascension in that sense, that it's like, no, that was the part that even if a DJ didn't play the whole record, made sure he played that part with the hook, you
right.
know? And so it's a special record. I just don't know if it's, how about this? The way you feel about Hey Jude is how I
Mhm.
feel about Jesus Walks. And I think that's why it's so comparable. It's like, oh no, this isn't a top 10 Kanye record. Oh,
Right.
top, but as far as important Kanye record, not like two or three, numero uno. Like
Yeah.
it's his most important record. It's just not even one of his maybe 15 or 20 best records, in my opinion. Like I can
Yeah,
literally
like,
think,
going to argue that "Hey Jude" was the best Beatles or the most important or most iconic Beatles song, you could probably make that argument. Like, that's a
right.
reasonable argument.
Right. So we're dealing with the same thing on different spectrums, which is kind of what your music what it is. But it's also one of those things that it's like what resonates with people isn't always the most musically profound song. It's like literally, I mean, I tell people, matter of fact, I think the song Spaceship that literally comes right after Jesus Walks or before Jesus Walks, it's right before Jesus Walks, I think. I think Spaceship's a better record than Jesus Walks, you know?
Okay.
But it's like in the in American culture, Black America too, it's like, oh no, Jesus Walks is that moment. You know what I mean? And it's special. And you can't, it's one of those things. It's like, no, he was always different, He
Yeah.
just hadn't fully found himself yet and had a different way of manifesting it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's talking about hustling in Jesus Walks. Like at the end of the first verse, he's like, "But I'll be back till November. I got packs to move. I hope Jesus." It kind of gives you that insight to let you know that even a man that's like arrogant, uh,
Yeah.
doing evil things. Oh no, no, no! Jesus is in his life too. It's
But
like,
to me, that's the point of the song, right? Like, that's the Jesus is with, or God is with, like, all of the people, even the people who are the um I'm using this word loosely, undesirables, right? Like the people who society would call that. That
yeah.
that's part of the outro too. He says, "Jesus walked with him," right? I mean, that's part of the where he lists out all those people. Um,
My favorite was I ain't here to argue about his facial features or turn atheists into believers. He tried to he simplified it. The way Kathy Lee need Regis is the way we need Jesus. It's like that was
yeah,
where Kanye was better than everybody else. He could break something down fundamentally in a very Tupac-like manner, but he kind of did it more tongue-in-cheek than Tupac. When Tupac would say stuff like this, it would be very serious.
yeah,
It would hit you. He made it kind of clever and entertaining. And it's very hard to do when you're literally talking about Jesus. I think the most important part of the song, though,
yeah,
is part of the second verse that starts where he goes to the hustlers, killers, murderers, drug dealers, even the strippers. Jesus walks with them.
right,
It you. I mean, and this is just me as a believer. You know, I always tell people it's like, no, Jesus really didn't hang with like the wealthy and the nobility. He hung with the pimps. He hung with the hoes. He hung with the murderers. And people used to castigate him and be like, how can you sit with these people but not sit with us? And he'd be like, well, I didn't come here to save you. You're not one of my followers or believers. I came to follow those who
right,
believe that I exist and know that I am God's son, literally. Not the name of a Nas album, but
yeah,
literally God.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think it's and it's also one of those things. I don't think there's a more important hip hop record that's lacking the quality of this record. Like all the other important hip hop records that rank high, it's like no, the quality is there. Like
mm,
this is good as Cream. This isn't as good as Fight the Power or Children's Story. It's just not. But in the history of hip hop, oh no, it's just as important as those records, though.
yeah. It's one of the crossovers between the two songs, honestly, is that this is a really sticky song too. Like, it stays like the syncopated. That's like the offbeat, intentionally offbeat. The Jesus, well, because he's not doing it right on the beat. It's a little bit.
Oh, doing it
He's,
on purpose like that.
yeah,
Yes.
he's doing it to catch your attention, which it's and syncopated is the word for like doing it intentionally, like to grab your attention. Um,
Right.
and so that sticks. There's the I think of it almost as like a prison gang song. Like, I mean, the way they those like the recordings they made of prison gangs in like the 30s where they're singing
Yeah.
um like the opening is that, right? I mean, it's the boom, boom,
Boom, boom,
boom.
boom,
Yep.
boom.
That has that feel to it too, and
That's
it's
water.
set nicely. Yeah.
Yeah. It has like the way that it comes in is very like um Billie Holiday, Nina Simone-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like there's a sense of blackness to the come in, like that
Yeah.
old like oppressed blackness. It does give off those vibes on the come in. And I think that was intentional too.
Oh,
When we
sure.
look because think about it, we didn't know really who he was like that when this record came out. But when now you can look back and be like, no, 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 all those moves were intentional.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
He
And
was
I
hard.
voted for Kanye. What do you think about the fact that I voted for Kanye?
Are you asking me legitimately?
I am because I've been having this conversation on According to Hip Hop, which obviously has mostly a Black and Latino following. That, quite frankly, I'm tired of voting for my oppressor.
Yeah, like
I don't think of you as an oppressor because I find you to be an affluent white man and a forward thinker. But those people that they be putting up, it's like, oh no, that's my oppressor, and I'm tired of voting for my oppressor.
um I understand your argument. He would not be the person that I would choose instead. Like, um, at the point, maybe
I would
this
vote for Prince
one,
if he was still here. And
like the one who at when he ran for office, that person um, was at least publicly seemed to be in the middle of a mental health crisis and needed to find some um, assistance before he like and because of that and because we were coming off of all the Donald Trump stuff where a celebrity let's say did a very poor job um in that position. I was kind of not in the place to think about um another one, I guess. But um like do I think it's a good idea to have voted for him? No, I don't. If you're asking me my honest opinion. But
yeah,
like
no,
um but do I respect your rationale? Yeah. How about that?
my thing. So let me tell you what my rationale was. I'm glad that you brought up Donald Trump. So it's like, you're right. Kanye was going through mental health issues at the time, but it was also very clear to me that Donald Trump had mental health
Well,
issues.
yeah. And both.
And and so it's just one of those things about the dichotomy of this nation where it's like, so it's okay for the rich old white man to have mental health issues and he can gallivant his way into office and call people pussies and and this, that, and the other. But Kanye, it's not okay for him to have those mental health issues and considered to be a viable threat for office because here's the thing. He was extremely wealthy, like most of those people are. Matter of fact, he probably is probably wealthier than most of the people who have been president.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Most of those guys have tawdry issues and tawdry past and tawdry behavior.
True story.
So I was looking at him, it's like, well, shit, he's not much different than those white guys except for he's black.
Yeah.
And so that was my rationale. Do I think he would have made a good president? No. But to be honest with you, I can count the presidents that I thought were above average on one hand since we've been alive.
It's just short list. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Obama, Bill Clinton, next. And I'm not saying that as somebody who used to vote Democrat. And even some of the stuff Clinton did that has come back to the black community now. It's like,
Yeah.
but and people don't understand this about Clinton, his foreign policy though.
Yeah.
What he did foreign policy wise, it's like, no, I'm gonna give him some credit and call him above average. So it's like, oh no, I've only seen one great president in my day, and I'm glad that he is black. But it's like the system's kind of screwed, and it's like if you don't want me to vote for Kanye, like give me some options. Now I can see why when I was a kid. Do you remember who was it? Dukakis and Bush. Was that the one where Ross Perot was in on, or was that Clinton and Bush that Ross Perot was in on?
I believe.
Clinton Bush.
Yeah.
No,
I think it's. I think. Don't hold me to that, but I think
I
96.
I totally understand why there was about 7 to 17% of the population that at various points was voting for Ross Perot. Like
Yeah.
I get it because it's like, oh no, if you're educated and you're looking on this side, it's like, well, I don't want this motherfucker. Like his dad worked for the CIA. his dad was literally like funding fucking Nazi banks during the World War. I can't trust this motherfucker. And then I'm looking over here at this guy. It's like, man, you're sitting up here slutting off on your wife before you even get in the office. It's like, I can't trust you either. It's like, nah, give me the guy with money. You know, because that's really what makes this economy go is people's thoughts about money. And it's like I can understand why somebody like Ross Perot, although he probably wasn't as politically savvy, no, I can see why people gravitated towards him now at 42 because it's kind of like some of the same rationale that I have for voting for Kanye. It's like, what the hell do I have to lose? Look at the assholes you keep handing me.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to step out for just a second. Make sure. You,
Actually, I was about to say we can actually wrap up. We've actually been here for about an hour.
okay. All right. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
We,
unless you had some Jesus
there's
walk
plenty of
thoughts.
talk about. Okay, but that's an okay place to wrap up. We can tell the people that they need to send us money, though, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can super chat me and Andrew now, and y'all can come in with your live takes and your chimes just like everything else. I see you, Jadarion, for pulling up. Jeremy, Born Gifted. I appreciate y'all pulling up. We're gonna keep on doing this. You know what I mean? Like we're actually able to go live now and receive the super chats and stuff. And so, we really want to bring people together, have people in the space. Please click like and subscribe to the Mirror Music page. I this a lot of people don't know that we named it Mirror Music because the name of the high school newspaper where we met and what brought us together was called The Mirror at West Charlotte. And we've been pretty much rocking together ever since. I think we've
Yeah.
parted ways through the years, but we've always found a way every few years to touch base. In the last few years, we've become the best of friends all over again. So this is like, I feel blessed and fortunate to do this with you. I shout you out all the time on According to Hip Hop when I'm doing stuff. When I was on the Fresh Out Hip Hop podcast a couple weeks ago, I was talking about you and just like, what you mean to me and how you've always been there for me and had my back. And they were like, yeah, they're like, everybody needs an Andrew on their team. And I'm like, you're fucking right. I'm like, you do. Everybody needs an Andrew. It don't matter what color you are when you're the type of person that you are, Andrew. So I just, wanted to shout you out for that and say thanks. And this was a great first show. We're pulling back up to
Yeah.
talk about the flutist Monday. Real quick. I know you got to go. Did you hear my KRS-One comparison on Twitter?
Yeah, I did.
We're going to talk about that Saturday because people think I'm
Good.
joking.
Because I wanted to text you like immediately when I saw that, and this was, and when I saw it, you were like, it was like 4 p.m, so I knew you were at work and you weren't gonna be able to like really engage with it. So I was like, we'll save that for like when we can actually talk about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't want to delve into that with you Saturday and gauge your thoughts because that's how it feels. But we'll talk about it.
Sounds good. So that'll be Saturday, right? We said Saturday.
Saturday at 11. Back up to talk about the flutist, formerly known as 2000. Yes.
All right, cool. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. We did this one time before without advertising it, and there were one or a half of a person there for part of the time. Thanks for coming to hang out with us. We'll see you next time.
Hip hop started, Andrew. I remember when there was like
Yeah, we got to build it up, man. Build it up. This is step one, brick by brick. All right, man. See you. Take care.
See you, man. Take care.